Hi, my name's Eloy Sarate.
I'm Senya Lubisich.
I am the storyteller, and she is the historian.
And we wanted to start our class discussion with you by talking about and introducing a framework that we're going to use for the class that we call the three visions of society. We're going to start with the traditional vision of society. When we think about these three visions, they are going to have a similar form or structure, although there's going to be developments that push change through these three different visions. So in the traditional vision of society, power is held by kings and nobles, the elites. There is no equality. The idea that people could have equality is something that's foreign in this vision of society. Bloodline determines who you are and what role you're going to occupy in society. There's no constitution in the traditional vision of society. Tradition, privilege, they are what establish what happens in this vision.
Well, I would like to interject here.
Please.
Because we're just launching into these ideas of visions and moving across. But what are we really asking about? What are we focusing on historically? When we're thinking about a vision or a traditional vision of society, we're talking about how power is distributed within that society. So as historians, we'll be asking questions of what these visions mean. Is who's holding power? Why are they holding power? That's what we're really looking at in these three visions, how those ideas of power and organization are identified, justified, and then transformed over time, right? This is a history class. Change over time is important to keep in mind.
It's essential to keep in mind. So when we think about the distribution of power in the traditional vision of society, the structure that power is built into is the corporate structure. You can think of the word today, corporations. It's the same root, the idea of a body, that there is a head, there are arms, there are legs. What a head does, only a head can do. What arms are made for, only arms can do. And so that's a very hierarchical, structured way of understanding how power will be distributed throughout this vision. And then lastly, change will come about with caution and tradition. I can't be interrupted in the middle of a chart, you know?
She's on a roll.
I'm on a roll.
But again, another idea of using that analogy, it's analogy, right? Of a body. I think that's the right word. But when you're looking at a body, it looks natural. So one of the powers of a traditional structure is the idea that it is natural, that everything that you see, how your society is organized, you can identify in a natural form. So it's easy to be able to say, look, it's traditional, it's natural. The society is organized like a body. The leaders are the thinkers. The workers are the arms. The whoever is your legs. But it's always with this idea of a natural component to it, because it's hard to argue against it.
You're going to have fun with that point
Yes.
when you talk about monarchy.
Yes, I am.
So, hold on. And so the premise behind these visions of society and this history course is that in the year about 1400, no historian can really start where they're told to start, but give or take around 1400, if we put you in a time machine, not a historian's endeavor.
We like time machines, storytellers.
Storytellers do. And we sent you back to any one of these states that you see on the map, you would essentially observe this very natural structure, this traditional vision of ordering the society.
What we'll always look at, if you look at this map here, you see how the states are organized in a territory and also within a certain region. But if you look at that map, there's a lot more land that is not tied to any state. So the idea that you have a naturally organized society based on a body model, and then when you look out, particularly like in places like China, look over the wall. It looks like there is no body out there, and that the people are out there are a threat to your body.
I would just like to know if anybody's ever actually gotten to look over the wall in China. That sounds fun.
Okay. Maybe
Storyteller.
We'll go.
Okay. So as we move through this unit in the course, one of the things that we're going to be asking you to think about a lot is this issue of change over time. And one of the places that we want you to watch for this change is going to be in the area of trade. When we're thinking about where trade is happening, the way you've been traditionally taught is that it's happening in the Atlantic with the age of European exploration. But the story is much bigger than that as we start this class. And so understanding all of the areas where trade is pushing and forcing change is going to be an important thing that you need to keep track of as we move through these chapters.
And also what she's telling you, I think, in that, forget any course you've ever taken, because it's not happening in the Atlantic. This is a world course, or we're dealing with a larger part of the world. So you have to reconceptualize exactly what you're thinking about in terms of trade and who is interacting with one another.
And so really fundamentally, what we're trying to lay out with these three visions of society is the way that we're framing the course. So if you're going to forget every history course you've taken so far, we're asking you to forget this idea that this history, the history since 1500, is the story of the rise of democracy. And we're trying to get you to understand the complexity of the way that power is being structured, the natural systems that have been put in place, and the way that those are changing, reacting against each other, and developing over time. So as you work through this material, there are things that we want you to keep track of in terms of the political structures and systems that you see at the beginning of the course and where those changes are taking place. How are social hierarchies being challenged? How are economic relationships being changed? And then who, again, back to power, is in control of these interactions.
How is the body organized?
Or reorganizing.
Yes. Perfect.
So, on to the next.